What is going on, you guys? The Keith Carnes here, and welcome to another episode of Cartoon Theories. This is episode 2, decided to return to the series, and today we are talking about Aladdin taking place in the future. Now, as we all know, we all grew up, at least most of the people watching this probably grew up, including myself, watching Aladdin as a kid, so you were very, very familiar with the character, the story, and all that stuff. So, of course, growing up, we always thought, oh, Aladdin takes place in the past. Aladdin, takes place when, they didn't have cars, they didn't have modern technology, blah, 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 blah. That is until the internet got its hands on Aladdin, and people are claiming... You fucking fan? That's not my due. People are claiming that the events in the movie actually take place in a post-apocalyptic world and actually takes place in the year 10,300. Now, think about that. It's currently 2015, as of this recording, of course. 10,300? It's a long time from now. We'll all be fucking beyond dead. So, I'm going to read you guys some information here about the theory, and then the argument that a lot of people put of why they don't think the theory is true, and I'm going to give my opinion. So it says here, in one scene of Disney's Aladdin, Genie calls Aladdin's clothes, quote, so last century, unquote. Genie was trapped in the load. He was trapped in a load. That sounds really wrong. Genie was trapped in the lamp for 10,000 years, so there is no way he could have known about the fashion trend which would have happened while he was in the lamp. Which means the latest Genie could have been trapped in the lamp during the 3rd century. If he spent 10,000 years in the lamp, it means that it's 10,300 AD when he gets out. Aladdin takes place in the future, or more exact, a post-apocalyptic world where only Arabic and some Greek have survived. It's been so long that the name Arabia has been corrupted into Agrabah, in the movie, of course. The Islamic religion has turned to the point where there are no like religious stuff such as prayer mats, etc., etc., but people still give praise to Allah in moments of happiness. Amazing technological marvels left behind by the previous civilization, like flying carpets or genetically engineered parrots who can compare in human speech instead of just mimicking it, are taken for granted by locals or considered as being magic. The Genie proves this by making impressions of ancient long-dead celebrities such as Groucho Marx, Jack Nicholson, etc. In addition to this, in the Aladdin Genesis video game, there's a modern-day stop sign buried in the sand, as well as a number of bones and skeletons. So that's quite interesting. If it takes place in the future, why is there a stop sign buried in the sand, and why are there so many dead people's remains in the sand, bones and whatnot? So that's interesting. So here's the argument against the theory. So, being that he is the Genie, he is a being with a different perception of time and reality, like a Time Lord. Genie doesn't have to be alive back then to have infinite knowledge of certain culture. Genie is just making a quick joke, like he always does. Some may argue, quote, well, why would he do that if Aladdin wouldn't get the jokes? End quote. Sure, Aladdin wouldn't have understood the jokes that Genie was referencing, but do you really think after 8,000 years Aladdin would know who Groucho Marx is? Lastly, Genie says indoor plumbing is going to be huge, once again showing how he perceives time and referencing an event that has not yet happened. As the video game is not directly canon, it may not be that much of a support to this theory. So, this is quite interesting. Now, before in the last episode, I covered Ed, and Eddie in Purgatory, and that one was a lot more convincing to me than this one here. The reason I really don't believe that this is something that takes place in the future is simply because this movie was made as an ancient thing, and I don't really think that Disney would sit there and say, yeah, we're going to make this movie that looks like it takes place in the past, but in reality, between us, it takes place in the very distant future. I don't believe that at all. I mean, what would be their agenda? What would they gain out of doing that? Just that it's an inside joke among the Disney people back in the early 90s that made the movie, and they know? I don't really buy that. Everybody needs to remember that these are movies. These aren't events that happened. These aren't things that were out of our control. This is something that, human beings made. And in the end, it's not true. And the same thing could be said about Ed and Eddie in Purgatory, but there's a lot more to support. There is a lot more to support that theory rather than the Aladdin theory. The Aladdin theory, to me, there's really not much supporting except for except for Genie saying that couple things and like mimicking Jack Nicholson. But let's face it, the Jack Nicholson thing was probably for the audience because we know who Jack Nicholson is. He's a big-time actor. As far as the video game goes, like it said, it's not canon, so it doesn't really support anything, and it was probably just there as maybe a joke, or maybe it played into the movie into the video game somehow. I've never played the game, so I can't say. So to me, this isn't true, but it may be true to some of you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is definitely an interesting one, but I just don't think it's as viable as the Ed and Eddie one. This is Keith Carnes. I'll see you guys in the next. Thanks for watching.